That if you didn't mess up with his politics, he wouldn't not touch you. So the church didn't take a very active role in saying that we need to get rid of. No, it was kind of passive,
Yeah.
which I didn't like much, but that's fortunately that's the way it was. So they started in Cuba. They used to be, now probably it's different. About 96, 97% of the population was Catholic, and the other was the other denomination. So all of a sudden, as Fidel Castro keeps getting more control, like disbanding the police and replacing the police with the people that were with him, all the soldiers and everything else. And then taking steps as to, for instance, if you, in Cuba by law, if you work 11 and a half months, you were entitled to 1 month vacation pay. All of that, all of a sudden, he came out and said, well, we cannot afford that. Your vacation now is cutting sugar cane, which is very tough. Believe me, I have done that.
Cutting
sugar cane over to the field, in other words, to work. If you couldn't cut sugar cane, then to patrol your place of work. Imagine with the rifle walking around here. Okay, this is that's how he started changing things. All of a sudden, all these benefits that we have were all eliminated.
Right. And then, but what changes did you see happening in the church?
They changed. Well, then they start putting spotters watching the people that went to church and who they were, and of course, as things got a little bit tougher, then all of a sudden ration became necessary. Well, all of a sudden your ration book have been misplaced
because you're a Catholic.
Or for whatever reason, now they are forcing you. Well, if you don't do this, you know how it is that your ration book might get lost or something, and without a ration book, you wouldn't eat very well, even though.
So, if you had a dissenting opinion, including being Catholic, that you could have it misplaced?
Well, not necessarily because of that. They will wait and see how you behave. But if they saw that you were, like you were attend church every Sunday, that might go into your file as watch it. They wanted people that didn't believe in anything.
Okay.
And so that's how it started with the church, and they start tightening it down. So people, unfortunately, I said, well, to get my ration book, I try not to go to church that often, just one time. Very skillfully, they have the control, the total control of everything. Remember, you could not change jobs. To change jobs, you have to go and ask permission to the Minister of Industry. Think about that. Here in this country, you just walk out and get another job. Not there. You want to change jobs, you have to be authorized. If not, you don't have a job. If you don't have a job, you don't need. Now, it's difficult in Cuba to starve to death. This is not like Eastern Europe with those frozen tundras and snow. You drop a seed and a banana tree comes out, so you eat. But your life becomes really very, very miserable.
Very
miserable.
Yeah.
You don't have anything much to eat. You wear the same thing. That's another thing. As far as the selection on the store, used to be that the stores will have the same selection that you would have it here. In fact, when a new automobile was previewed here, it will be previewed the same day in Havana. No longer. And that's why you still see is Cuba has been like in a encapsulated in something. It's like time has not gone by.
Right.
It's the same thing that it was
And
30 years ago.
how was it for the priests? Do you know?
The priests, and a lot of priests came from different orders, like in France here.
Mhm.
They start moving out.
Oh.
Yeah, a lot of them had to move out.
They had to?
They had to, yes.
Why?
Because they pressure them. They make their existence difficult.
Oh. So
A
they
very
were
subtle way of
so
doing
they
it.
were allowed to leave, but the regular people weren't allowed to leave? Is that it?
The regular people were allowed to leave under a number of conditions, like and that's another subject too.
Well, we can move into how you did get out.
Because no, that is very interesting how it works.
Uh-huh.
If you wanted to leave the country,
Mm-hmm.
you will go to the police station and fill a permit.
Mm-hmm.
The next thing that happens is they will come to your house and take inventory of every cotton picking thing that was in that house.
Wow.
Anything, from paper clips, anything, everything.
Uh-huh.
Now, you think that by doing that you were going to leave in 3 or 4 weeks? No, sometimes it took years and years to be able to leave. So, in the meantime, if you have a car and there's no part, nothing, the car is not working, they expected to find that car because it was in the inventory. What did people do? They put the car on concrete blocks in front of the house. So here is the car.
Wow.
So when you finally your turn to leave came,
Oh.
they came with the inventory, and you better had everything that was in that inventory.
Wow.
Isn't that nice?
Wow. So.
And then they have,
So what happened if something was missing?
then you have to either find it, pay for that, or it may negate your chances of leaving. And as a matter of fact, in the airport there was a big room. It was, well, it really is a big space. It was like a fish bowl. It was a gigantic fish bowl. And the people that were leaving that day in those so-called freedom flights, they were taken there. And from time to time, and I remember because I was there when I lived, they bring policemen or people that walk around, and sometimes they would point at somebody, and the police will come pick that somebody out of the. So when they sat you in that room, you try to sit in such a way that you were kind of an interrogation mark, so nobody can see you. How can you hide underneath something? It was tough, and until of course you were on the plane and the pilot, we were finally.
So what did you have to do to leave? Did you have the inventory done and all that?
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, let me see, because we were leaving.
What year was it when you left?
That was 1963, the year that I left.
And were you able to?
We didn't have to have an inventory because there was another member of the family that was left in the house. Okay.
Oh, okay.
If you want, however.
And who did you leave with?
Well, my wife and my mother.
Okay.
I think my mother is the one that stayed with the house.
Oh.
One of my aunts.
And were you able to bring your 2 boys with you?
No. I came by myself.
Oh, okay.
It was. See, you rolled the dice. We tried to get as a family, but it was impossible.
Wow.
Not only that, I had a position in the government
Right.
as a commissar, so my situation was very delicate. And the only way that I could get through was, and I told at the beginning of this conversation my friend that that worked with me, that his brother was a commandant with Fidel Castro. I went to see my friend, and I told him that I was my desire to leave. And of course, he cussed me out right and left and called me everything in the world. But I told him, I am putting my life in your hands. The only thing that I need, and unfortunately, eventually you will understand what I'm doing this. What I want, in the name of the friendship that we have had for so many years, that you guarantee the life, or not the life, the safety of my family when I'm gone.
Mm-hmm.
And he did. Unfortunately for him, several years later, he paid with his life in front of the firing squad. In other words, he found out that this was not the paradise that he thought, and it was too late for him.
So did he do something that caused him
Well,
to?
no, probably, I am speculating, he probably started a counter-revolution type of thing.
Wow. Wow. So how did your wife and sons get out, and what year did they come?
They came a little bit, luckily, just a few months before the Bay of Pigs invasion. Because after the Bay of Pigs invasion, they closed all that for several years. So they were lucky.
Wow.
And they also, they were lucky that my wife's uncle had a big business in Cuba as a representative of Arthur Anderson, the big CPA firm.
Yeah.
So when they left before we did. He went to work with Arthur Anderson again in New York. And they are the ones that claimed my wife and my two sons.
Ah, okay.
It was easier for them to claim them than it was easier for me.
Oh.
That's how the problem was solved.
Okay, so did your friend do anything because of his uncle to assist you? Or
You mean, how did I
to
get
assist
out?
you leave? Yeah.
No, my situation was a little bit different. I have some friends that left the government, and when they did, when they have a bunch of blank passports, seals, and all that kind of stuff. So when I told them about my predicament, so they created a passport for me.
Well, now were these friends of your friend?
No, this was a friend of mine.
Oh, okay, okay.
No connection with the other friend.
Okay.
And they were from the same Catholic school.
Okay.
This other friend was a friend from the business world.
Mm-hmm. It's okay.
And so they created a passport for me with a different name, but the same photo and everything, all the seals and all that kind of stuff. And so I used that. Now, the only reason that I could get away with this, at the very beginning, things were so confused that you could pull, and I have a story about that in a moment. That it was very easy to do that. Today, it would have been impossible to do that. That they have pretty much control. But at that time, things were not yet. They have a lot of incompetent people in place, and nobody knew what was going on. So it was easy. Let's say that there was a fighting chance to get it.
Right.
So I got that passport. I applied. My date of leaving came. Obviously, you were only allowed to leave with a couple of shirts and the pants. And I have a Rolex. It was not a Rolex. What was the other very famous brand?
Tiger.
No. I cannot remember it. Anyhow, one of my uncles cut my shoe in half and put the watch inside the shoe. Inside the shoe. See, you couldn't take anything with you, so you didn't know. Well, what am I going to face? At any rate, here comes the
What about money? No money.
No money.
Wow.
No money. Forget it. No money. So here comes the day. I am taken to the airport. My saying goodbye to my wife and children had to be at home because it would compromise me and them if we were seen together. You have to take all kind of precautions.
Wow.
So they put me in that fishbowl, and you stay in the fishbowl for at least 6 hours.
Wow.
And then you sweat it out waiting. Finally, they called you and you get into the plane. You're still not safe. The plane takes off. Finally, when the pilot said you are in international air, then everybody started hollering.
Wow. And everyone on the plane was leaving the country?
The country, yes,
Wow.
yes.
And what did you call it? They were called freedom flights?
Freedom flights.
Wow.
But then that's the beginning of the situation. Now, yeah, okay, freedom. Now finally we are free, but I have a phony passport. So how is that going to be when I get to the States? And so that was the next thing. But to my amazement, here we land in Opalaca. No, not Opalaca. We land in Miami Airport, but in a secluded part of the airport. And we were taking. No, I'm sorry. We landed in Miami, in a very secluded part. And here comes the officer, the immigration officer, a woman, and in perfect Spanish, we have the plane. We all have the plane, and she said, I want 2 lines. This line here with legitimate passports. This line here with phony passports. The 2 lines were almost identical. Okay, so. And then, of course, we were taken to a place called Opalaca in Miami, in North Miami. 10-foot fence. I mean, but we were well treated. I mean, we were debriefed, interrogated, but no rough stuff or anything like that. No, we were fed, and we had TV and everything else.
So you mean a fence? You mean you were like camping?
No. Fence meaning that we were in a stockade.
Oh, okay.
In a stockade. We could not leave. There were a couple of state patrol, Florida State Patrol, patrolling around the fence, around this complex. And usually it took people about 3 days to leave, to be released. It took me twice because my commissar deal, and they really were looking at me very carefully because the government was sending all kind of spies, pretending, so to these states. They were sending all kind of people to do, and so the government here wanted to be certain.
So how did they know you were a commissar if you had a fake passport?
Well, I figured that I would state when they ask you, well, what did you do? I was this, I graduated, but unfortunately.
So you took 6 days then?
Yes,
Yeah,
took 6. Unfortunately, this came up, and without consulting me, I was appointed this thing. I explained all that because I figured that they could find that out, and there was no need to hide it. So that extend my stay, but stay was fine. We were fed very well, and we have TV, and just here we couldn't leave. And then finally, after 6 days, I was released to an uncle that I have here.
The one in New York?
No. This one was here. The one in New York.
In Florida?
In Florida. Was here in Florida.
Okay.
So I stay in Florida. Basically, everybody that came felt that the situation with Fidel Castro wasn't going to last too long. So nobody wanted to spend any money or do anything or get new training, new work, new job or anything like that. And because of that, company, rightly so, would not invest money in people like myself because
Right.
if am I going to invest when you have a foot here, a foot on the plane? And of course, you know the answer to that. It never happened. So I ended up, I found a job in a Grand Way. Grand Way is like,
Grocery store?
yeah, like a Publix.
Okay.
But it has shoes and stuff like that.
Oh, okay.
And my English was really a lot to be desired. But when you are in a new country and you are trying to learn a new language, the thing to do is you watch people. You learn how to read the body language, and that makes up for a lot. For instance, I was a salesman, a clerk in the shoe department. And here comes this guy. He was a black person, okay, and I'm watching him, and he's trying shoes, and all of a sudden he says, "I need a shoehorn." No, I'm sorry, he didn't say that. I need a spoon. I need a spoon. Spoon. What in the world is a spoon? So I'm watching him and see what he's doing, and I notice that he's with his finger is trying to get, and I said, "Oh, spoon. It had to be a shoehorn." Shoehorn. Here it is. So you made up a lot if you were watching. However, if you have to answer a phone, forget it. It took me years to conquer the phones, what I call the phone syndrome, because you are hearing, you don't see anybody.
Right.
It was difficult. I mean, I hated the phone.
Right.
In fact, I have another story about that. I have all kinds of stories. I am working in a hotel as a general cashier in New York City, 42nd Avenue and 12th Avenue, where all the big liners. And I have a deal with my co-workers that every time that my phone rang, they will come and answer the phone. And it worked fine until the controller found out. He almost fired everybody.
Wow.
He got so angry because he said, rightly so, "You're doing him a disfavor. How do you think he's going to overcome this fear? He had to learn how to talk on the phone, period. So if I see anybody anymore answering his phone, consider yourself fired."
So he did you a favor then?
He did. At that time, I didn't understand that as a favor, but it took, like I said, it was, and of course, when you're learning a language, you're trying to add words to your vocabulary.
Right.
I was living in Brooklyn, next to the last stop to Coney Island, and the subway was always jam-packed. Plus the fact that the first time that I was sitting, I made a mistake, and I learned very quickly. I got up to give the seat to a lady that came in. That's not done. and everybody jump into the. You don't do that. But in Cuba, we did that regardless if it was the people.
Right.
I said, okay. Then the other thing that I did was, since we usually didn't have a seat, and people in New York read the newspaper, they fold it and they hold it between the arm and the elbow here, you know. And so you are very close to them, so you're looking at the paper yourself. So I would look at the paper and try to see about words, new words that I could incorporate.
Right.
And I don't know if I have told you this story before or not, but I'm looking at this and it says, the intercourse of the nations. Oh boy, that sounds like something heavy. So I go to the office, and here is Vivian. I haven't forgotten even her name. Blonde, 22 years old, blue eyes. Vivian, what is intercourse? Ask Kevin. I mean, but at the same time, they made allowances because they knew I wasn't being gross or anything like that. I was trying to add vocabulary, but things like that. I mean.
So, how soon after you reached the United States did you find a church and, you know, resume going to Mass?
Well, if I remember correctly, when I was in Brooklyn, I don't remember going to church in Brooklyn for some reason. I mean, you have to consider that life was so hectic.
Yeah.
And that.
And new, everything was new.
Right. We were living before Brooklyn. We were living in around it was 72, 73, but on the wrong side, not on the west side, but on the east side. And we were living in what I call a subterranean apartment. In other words, I could see the legs of the people going by. Okay, and the apartment consists of a big room, a little bit bigger than this room.
Was your wife with you now, and your two boys?
Yes, my wife is finally with me.
Now, wasn't she a CPA also?
Not quite.
Okay.
But she worked with her uncle in that CPA firm.
Okay.
At any rate, the room was a little bit larger than that, has a small bathroom, so we had two beds, one for the children and one for the two of us. She didn't have, I was making $60 a week, which was, I mean, it was a lot more. I mean, and today's dollars would be probably $300-400, something like that. And I usually even walk, so I could save the 10 cents of the subway. She couldn't. She had. When you came, they told you that you bring heavy clothes because of winters and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
But this was August. She would go to Central Park. Central Park was a block and a half away from the apartment with the children, in a heavy, what do you call it?
Coat?
Sweater.
Oh, okay.
Sweater. Could you imagine? I mean, with that heat.
Why?
Because we didn't have anything else. We didn't have anything else.
Oh,
So
because you were told to bring heavy clothes.
Heavy clothes, right?
Oh, wow.
So, we little by little we improved somewhat. Okay, so then we moved to Brooklyn to an apartment with one room, and of course that one room was the children's room, and we slept. And finally we found out what a Castro convertible meant. You know, we have heard about Caso Convertible, we didn't know what it was.
Uh-huh.
So now we know what it is, because that's what we were sleeping in. That was in the
Oh, okay, sofa bed.
in
Yeah.
the living room,
Yeah.
sofa bed. There is this custom in New York, I think it still is. On Thursday, people, they are allowed to put stuff on the sidewalk.
Oh,
People
okay.
that you can. So everybody in that building, of course, were refugees. And I remember this particular mother and daughter, that they have all kind of chairs. They all wear different chairs, different colors. Everything that they picked up, you pick up whatever you could.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember we got a TV, a round TV, with no box open.
Oh.
So, since I have worked in a store before I went to the sure industry in Havana that sold TVs, I was very familiar with how to handle TVs and that you could electrocute yourself, really.
Yeah.
So I put the TV, I built kind of a box, very high, nobody could really reach, and that's how we saw that TV. It was working,
Mm-hmm.
but that's what we could find. I mean, people, it's amazing how you...
Right.
Uh,
But I need to incorporate in this article about your faith.
okay,
And
faith.
so,
Well, then obviously, since we didn't have any money, the only things that we could do was go to the places that didn't charge, like Battery Park, the zoo,
mm-hmm.
that big cathedral in New York City,
St. Peter's?
St. Peter. Is that the name of the cathedral? No, in New York City, the big cathedral.
It's not St. Peter's?
Maybe it's St. Peter. It's in
Yeah.
Fifth Avenue.
Yeah,
Yeah, is that it?
I think it is.
And we went to mass there several times because when we were leaving, not too far away, we went there. For some reason, when you are in this kind of state, you're not thinking much about church.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of interesting. I don't understand why, because you suspect that it should be the opposite. That you're trying to get the Almighty to help you out,
Well,
and-
was it
but-
because
but
you didn't
you're-
have a church family?
but you are trying to get to eat every day.
Right.
So for some reason, I have to admit to that, church didn't come into the picture, really. It's
But you
something-
maintained your faith.
Oh, no, I did maintain my faith, but
How did you do that?